channel. It is the most earth-breaking, ground-shaking, but never me a show money taking. The man, the myth, the legend, the most electrifying villain in YouTube entertainment today, General Zod. What is up, everybody? And today I am going to be talking about the movie that I was anticipating, a movie that has gotten some different varying opinions about it. The movie, of course, I am talking about is Maxine, and I'm gonna give you guys my overall thoughts, opinions, and do a full breakdown of this movie and of the whole concept in general. Go scene by scene and kind of give you guys what I did with Long Legs, which is why I rate my movie the way that I rate it, kind of breaking down the individual scenes and giving you guys a logistical look at all of that stuff. So, as I said, warning, this is going to be a spoiler breakdown, a full dive into the movie. And to be quite honest with you, I don't know how long this will be, considering that the movie Maxine is an hour and some change. It's about the roughly the same length of Long Legs, so this should only take me about an hour, even going scene by scene. I'm not going to go through all of the dialogue, all of the stuff. I'm just going to highlight some stuff that stuck out with me and just what it was about the movie. And I talked with Bitchy for this. I talked with her after the film. We kind of sat down, got our ideas out, and then I sort of thought about it for a day or so. Let the movie sit with me. And I'll probably watch this as a trilogy and then give my overall ranking of X as a film trilogy in general. But here's my rough ideas if you didn't check out my spoiler free review, which is this movie screamed a 7 as soon as I got out. Now, just to give you guys a little bit of a breakdown on my ranking system, 1 through 4 is crap, 6 and 7 are slightly above average. Like 6 would be an average, 7 would be like it's got something, it's above average. 8 and 9 are very good movies, rewatchable. I'd watch them again. There's just something that keeps them from the top spot. And of course, 10 to me is like a masterpiece. So let's break this down, going scene by scene, and just jump right into my spoiler breakdown. So this movie, of course, stars Mia Goth, Elizabeth Debicki, Moses Shani, Michelle Monaghan, Bobby Cannavale, Lily Collins in a very small guest kind of position. Of course, the amazing Giancarlo Esposito and Kevin Bacon, who I'll get to him when we get to his introduction. What's up, Lemon Pie? How are you doing? I am going to go through scene by scene like I did with Long Legs, but this is for Maxine. And yeah, spoilers if you haven't seen it. But if you want to get a good idea of what the movie is like, I'm going to break it all down and why I ranked it where I did, which was a 7 out of 10. So, Maxine has a lot of star power behind it. And I'll kind of get into the different roles, but I'm going to, for these reviews, because it's easier, just go by the character's name in the movie instead of going through and going by the actor's name. But I will highlight the guest appearances because Lily Collins is like blink and you'll miss her. And she kind of has a fun role in this movie, which I want to point out. So, what is Maxine about? Maxine, I had a lot of questions about this. You do need to watch X, not necessarily Pearl, in order to get some of the stuff in the movie and the themes. And I'll talk about that and why it's a 7 for me, because whether or not I like this movie on a pure movie basis, as far as the story that X started, this does conclude a lot of those threads very well. My problem is how we get to our conclusion. And I'll get into that as I break this movie down. But we kind of open up with a very important shot, and this is where I knew they want to build this mystery. But here's my first complaint that I told you guys in my review. They show a scene of, it's got to be, I think they flashed it to like 1965, 1970, somewhere in there. And it's this little girl talking to a camera. Somebody is uh, filming her. It's our young Maxine, because they say, Maxine, say hi for the camera. She has this line that says, if you want something, then you have to be willing at all costs to take it. And the dad makes her do it again. She says the line and gives this kind of little smile. We open up to the movie, which is Maxine Minx, our protagonist from the first film. And this is where I say Mia Goth doesn't drop the ball on her acting. Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm trying to look a little bit more professional. Uh, so this is where we get the fact that with my issues with this movie, Mia Goth and the acting itself does not drop the ball. She goes into this audition room, and I like this scene for several different parts. One, I like how it sets up that there's a connected theme between the porn industry and Hollywood and how they're kind of the same. And I would almost say the porn industry treats their actors better, because the first thing they do is kind of scoff and look down on Mia Goth when they figure out she is a porn star trying to get this movie. It's a B rated horror movie called The Puritan 2. The first one did really well, but they are nervous at the fact that her credits are in adult films. And even though she's carved this adult persona, and we saw that in X, that being ironically her first film that got her name out there, they don't want to really hire her for it. But they're playing the thing, and there is a director, we don't know her name yet, and she says, uh, has her say the line. She's kind of enthralled, and then uh, in a very comedic scene, they say to take off her shirt and show her tits, which is ironic because, and this is what I mean, where this movie has a lot going on, but I'll tell you where they kind of don't go back to any of this great stuff that they lay out. So they're kind of establishing in the opening here that the Hollywood business is kind of snooty, but they do a lot of the same shit that the porn industry does, where even though they like to think of themselves as high class and as highbrow and everything else, they immediately say to her at the end of all this acting, and she gives this monologue and she cries on command, and then they say, show us your tits. So at the end of the day, they even look down upon horror movies, basically just wanting to see her naked and if she's marketable that way. And it's kind of a good contrast, which will go into the rest of the movie. And I thought it was a cool line after all of the side conversation. You hear them talking about, oh, she's a porn star, and they're kind of scoffing, and you think this is like some high class film, but it's really just a B rated horror movie, which the industry already looks their noses down on, which is, I think, kind of a statement to horror in general, that the director is getting across. So after this, we then go to another scene, and this is the opening montage. And it's a pretty cool opening. It really gets you in the stories. And this is where I said this isn't paying so much homage to the 80s, where it feels very much like the movie is in the 80s. You get news on Reagan, you have news on the censorship war between the music industry and the occult and heavy metal, and then you have in the background the Night Stalker. Now, this I'm mixed on, and I'll tell you my feelings when we get there. But just keep that in mind. The Night Stalker is a through line in this film, and kind of the uh, the television reporting is intermixed with the movie. So every so often, you'll have a scene happen. You'll look at a TV. They'll talk about the Night Stalker has taken his next victim. Blah blah blah. So we get that awesome scene, and then Maxine goes through this awesome next shot, which is basically a shot of um, her going into all of these porn type of things, and then we get a shot of these people doing dances in this strip club. There's a shady figure with gloves on. He's looking at this stripper dancing naked. It cuts. Now we're back to Maxine. She's walking through and she's going through a porn set. And it's kind of funny here, too. There's a little bit of humor mixed in this movie where one of her friends, I assumed, is getting banged. And she looks up and they're still shooting. And she's like, "Oh, hey, Maxine, how's it going on?" And she looks down at the guy. She's like, "Jesus Christ, is this guy ever going to finish?" And he's like, "Come on, let's go." Like, so you get a little behind the scenes of like the porn industry. And a lot of the women and guys are a matter of fact about it. They're talking. He's like, "I'm trying my best. I took too many pills," like that kind of a thing. So it's a little bit of funny commentary that's in the background. And then we get to her meeting at her friend Tabby. This is important. It's on my thumbnail. So Tabby is the person we saw uh, who was getting banged in the background, and she invites her to this party. Now, this is important because this party comes up several times with these different people who are closely connected to Maxine. This goes to the overall mystery of the movie. So her friend invites her to this mansion on the hills, and she says, "I'm gonna fuck this guy and basically uh, cement my position and get out of the porn industry and all of this other stuff." And she's like, "That's good for you. I'm not going to go to these parties." She's focused on just performing and acting, and she just wants to get her career on track. So she declines. And then the next scene we go to is that there is um, a video store she goes to, or no, no, I'm sorry. I saw this yesterday and wrote down some notes, so I'm trying not to mix myself up. So next scene we got is that the uh, the figure, it kills the figure stalks this person. And then she goes to the video store, which she works at on the side, with a friend of hers. He'll be important later. But basically, she gets a call before she goes there, and she finds out she got the role. And she comes in, and you guys seen this in the trailer. She basically says she's going to be the next big star. And it's a cool thing, a little nod to the horror tropes. And then there is a tape on it with Maxine from the first film, and it is delivered to her house. And it's basically the porn that was being made in the first movie that someone dropped at her door for her. We see this shadowy figure, and that's when we're introduced to my favorite character in this movie, played by the amazing Kevin Bacon. He plays a uh, private eye detective, and his name is John Lambert. It's a Louisiana name, but we'll just call him John. You see him deliver the tape, and he goes back and talks to the figure we saw in the beginning with the gloves on his hand. They're not showing. He's just kind of sitting in the background, and he talks about, he delivers the tape, but he says, "For what you got planned, I'm going to need more money up front, blah blah blah." And on the tape is a note that she has to meet the person who dropped it off at this swanky kind of hotel. So um so Leon, who is the video owner, was there sleeping overnight. He asks what's on the tape. She doesn't want to talk about it. Yada yada yada. We move on. Meanwhile, Amber and Tabby, who went to the big mansion party, the two friends she met, are found dead with the brandings of the serial killer, and they think it's the Night Stalker killer because it's kind of his MO. Although something about the murders are different. So there's two detectives we're introduced. We are introduced to Detective Torres and Detective Williams, and they are on the case. Detective Williams is played by Michelle Lily Monaghan, who is just great in this movie, and Bobby Cavil plays Detective Torres, and he's just great. He overhams it up pretty clearly for the movie. He's supposed to be the detective with bravado, and meanwhile, Detective Williams is more of she's the level-headed, kind of tells him, puts his shit together, and so they're trying to see if these murders are connected to the Night Stalker killer. Meanwhile, Maxine meets John for the first time, and there's a really great dialogue between her and Kevin Bacon. He talks about how she can't run from her past because it's going to come back and catch her. So there's a lot of veiled threats. He gives her a letter from the mysterious figure that wanted her to have the tape and says to meet at this party. If she doesn't, there will be consequences. She doesn't give a shit. She keeps the letter, but she doesn't really care about this. She's more concerned about her film. Meanwhile, Williams and Torres question Maxine about her best friends who are dead. She says she doesn't talk to cops, and so she goes to the lot. And this is where we meet my other favorite character, who I wish had a little bit more in this, played by Elizabeth Debicki, who plays Elizabeth Bender in the film. So Elizabeth is a British film director who wants to make a horror movie kind of like in X, where the director wanted to do a movie that transcends the genre of porn. In this one, she wants to transcend the horror genre, and she's a little bit concerned about having Maxine do this. She got a lot of pushback in the studio, but she fought for her to be on this film, so it's really important she nails it. And so she gives her a bit of a monologue about it. It's a very good speech. I'm not going to go through the whole thing. Like I said, this is just the broad strokes, and I'm highlighting the scenes that I like or don't like. I like this scene. It gives a lot of context. It's a really good scene. But anyway, she notices that when she goes to take a break, she had flashbacks seeing the Psycho house, which is a good homage to Psycho. She has flashbacks of the first X film, and then she notices Kevin Bacon's character, Lambert, following her. And so she gets out of the car, she puts keys in her hands, and she beats the ever loving shit out of Kevin Bacon's character, and like knocks out a tooth, cuts his face all up, and it basically like takes his camcorder, smashes it, and he vows revenge. That's important. Keep that in the back of your mind till later. It's a funny scene. Kevin Bacon is such a sleazeball in this movie. I think he really fits this role great. He does an amazing job as this like grimy, dirty Louisiana detective that doesn't really give a shit about what's going on. He just cares about getting paid. So she ignores him and begins reading her lines for the movie. Now, as she reads her lines, her good friend from the video store, Leon, is doing his thing, cleaning up and stuff, and he gets murdered. And there's not a lot of kills in this movie, not as gory as you would think, but this kill is pretty brutal. He gets stabbed. They show it pretty graphically, and he is a good friend of Maxine, which is supposed to hit home. Now, here is my first issue that I'm coming across when I say this screams a 7. Now, Leon's a great character, and like I said, nobody acts bad in this movie. I felt connected with the characters. But before they killed him, unlike X, we don't really get to know many of these players. We get to know vaguely the producer, we get to know Maxine a little bit more, but she doesn't have an arc. I'll get to that. And we get to know these people who come in and out. But like Tabby and the other prostitute dying and the porn star friend, we don't learn enough about them for me to care. So when they're found dead or when they get murdered, it doesn't have the same impact in X. Like in X, I knew the characters, even if it was kind of surface level, they were so charismatic that when someone died, you're like, "Ah, man, it sucks." But in this, it's just like, "Oh, okay, the friend was dying." So Leon, we get a scene with him cuddling with Maxine. They're watching movies and stuff, but I don't feel connected to the character. So when this scene happens, it's a cool, gory scene, but there's no oomph behind it, and I don't feel the emotions that Maxine feels. This is supposed to be her best friend. This is supposed to be a devastating scene, and Mia Goth plays the scene excellent. That's the conflicting thing with rating this is she's crying, she breaks through the tape, it's a whole thing. And this moment is supposed to, as an audience member, get us engaged and get us on her side and be like, we got to find out who this asshole is and she's got to bring him to justice. But I'm not quite there yet. And this is about midway through the film, like almost a halfway point. And and same thing with the detectives. They're cool and stuff like that, but I'm not finding myself connecting to any of these people, which is a big issue in your horror movie because then it just feels like another kill. And that's good for Jason and things like that. But X to me is a bit elevated with its storytelling. So when they drop the ball on some of this characterization, it really takes me out of the emotion I'm supposed to feel. So, anyways, long story short, basically, Leon's dead. He gets brutally killed. Like I said, the kill is cool. And so the next day, the detectives go and want to talk to Maxine. This time, it's her best friend. She says she is still not saying shit to them. The cop has a great line where she says to her, um, you know, when are you going to step in? When are you going to help us to stop victims? And she turns around, and once again, Mia Goth's delivery and performance is top notch. She says they need to learn to defend themselves. And this kind of harkens back to X, where she had to basically get herself out of that situation. So she's looking at the world like she's a survivor. And if these people want to survive, then they got to pull themselves out. And I think it for Maxine's character, I'm 50-50, and I'll get to that at the end. But I think it does show that there was an effect. I don't think they explore her trauma too much. There are a couple of scenes where she has PTSD, but once again, this movie has a lot of ideas sprinkled in it, but they don't really dive into any one particular thing. They're kind of just bouncing between these different themes without exploring it. There's a great thing with PTSD and survivor's guilt that could be explored and being from the military and having PTSD. I thought they were really going to dive into it when they started doing these scenes and she's having these heart palpitations and things, but they don't really get into it enough. And it's a missed opportunity given how great the line is. So we got Teddy, played by the amazing Giancarlo Esposito. He's got a very short role in this film, but I fucking loved every minute. And this is what I'm saying: the characters are well written still. Teddy is the agent of Maxine, and he used to be a detective who became an agent for the stars, and he found Maxine when she was doing porn and was impressed by her, so he's been pushing her to go mainstream. Fucking awesome scene. They talk, and he says he's going to get more information on Labatt, but tells her, "Don't do anything. Just go on to the set, do what you have to do." Meanwhile, on the set of Puritan, Maxine meets Mally Bennett, who was in the first film, which talks about sequels and stuff. It's a little fun nod. And Mally Bennett is played by the amazing Lily Collins. Lily Collins has a very, very, very brief cameo in this movie, but I actually epically loved it. She plays kind of this B-rated actress who's doing all these B roles. She made it, but she didn't. She's got talent, but not enough. The director makes a comment about it. And I think it's really great because Lily Collins is an underrated actress. And I think this role and the way she plays it really she stands out because I feel like she feels like she's in that situation with having Emily in Paris and being in all of these other movies that she's been in. And I feel like she hasn't gotten the shine she needs. So I just want to kind of go through her repertoire for a second. She was in The Blind Side. She was in Abduction. She was in The Mortal Instruments in the City of Bones. Uh, she, of course, is the main star of Emily in Paris, and she's done a lot of different films, and it's really hilarious because she is essentially this character who's done a lot of different things but has never really broken into the mainstream. So I like the fact that she plays the role so well and really plays into that. So she meets her, she gives her some advice about how this director is great and she's really got to chase his dream. Meanwhile, Lambert follows Maxine onto the set and chases her to the Psycho House, which is a nice homage. He has a gun. Of course, nothing happens, and he gets thrown off the lot by these these people. Now, the next day, uh, Maxine kind of, and this is the back half of the movie. And this is where I say also the movie moves kind of quickly. It's slow on certain scenes, but then it moves too quick to the ending. And I'll get to that when I wrap this all up. But the director notices Maxine is off. Basically gives her a speech because the lot has to shut down for a bit. And the director, who's really great, Elizabeth, comes out and she's like, "Hey, I don't know what's going on, but you got to get your shit together. I'm putting a lot at stake. It's not just your ass on the line; it's mine. So whatever you got to work out, you have the weekend to work it out." So Maxine basically says, "Gotcha. Let's go." And this is a cool montage. And once again, like I said, Ty West has a very good eye for doing these montage moments and playing into the thing. So you get that cool 80s vibe going, and she just paints her face and she's got like almost this war paint on. And part of you's watching the movie going, "Oh shit, what's going to happen?" And part of you's going, "Oh, she's going to kick ass." But then the way the scenes are constructed, you don't know what her plan is until it happens. And once again, like that about the movie. So she gets this like war paint on. She's ready to go. She goes outside, tricking Lambert into following her, thinking that he has her. Once again, Kevin Bacon playing the scumbag role to perfection. He kicks in all of these stalls. He's like, the difference between me and you is I'm a dirt bag and I'm a bad guy and I accept it, but you still think you're the hero. And right as to he thinks corners her because she jumps out of the bathroom window. He goes in, and all of a sudden you see this car's headlights. He's fucking got caught dead to rights, and Maxine standing in the car headlights. It's a really fucking cool shot. And Lambert goes out and he's got his gun raised, and he's like, "You fucking bitch, I'll kill you," and blah blah blah. And then you see Giancarlo Esposito's character step out. Teddy Knight comes out, and no, that's not gonna happen. And all of a sudden, Kevin Bacon gets whacked in the back of the head with a baseball bat. This is the best kill in my opinion in this film. So they got him. He wakes up and he's strapped in a car with handcuffs, like strapped into the steering wheel, and he's like talking about like basically pleading and does a 180. He's had this kind of cocky, arrogant thing going on, but once he realizes that he's basically caught by these people, they're in this junkyard, and his car is underneath this crusher, and he kind of know where it's going. And they're asking who he's working for, so she gives him the information. He gives him the what information he has, and basically he says he doesn't have much on the person, but the address he gave her is where they live, and he can flip. He doesn't like the dude, whatever else. And before this, Molly said she was going to the hills to that party, so that's important. But anyways, Maxine then tells Knight, with a little head shake, and he gets crushed in his car. So there's a very slow, ominous car crusher scene, and it's just great. You see him getting crushed, and then there's like a massive amount of blood just comes out of the car. It's a pretty gnarly. It's like the gnarliest kill in this movie. It's pretty crazy. Anyways, so sorry for that pause. Tech issues. So we're getting close to the ending now. Maxine is deciding whether or not she wants to visit this group, and she's like, "No, I'm not going to." And then she's like, "Fuck it, I've got to do this to finally be free of all of this stuff and clean my slate." So she goes to this mansion. The two cops follow her to the mansion, and so the house is on the Hollywood Hills. This is important for what I explain later. But she goes up and she finds out that there is a religious fanatic cult. And surprise, surprise, the person who was in the beginning shooting the thing, it turns out to be, I don't think her father, but like a stepfather figure. He does mention he tried to be a good father. She calls him dad, but I think it's implied he's not. They're very vague on that. But anyways, he has made this religious cult, which goes back to the things in the beginning, that there's this big movement against Hollywood and the movie that she's in, and that Hollywood is pushing these satanic views. So you got this really crazy uh, angle where there's fanaticism almost, and the name of the dude is Ernest Miller. He's a tele televangelist, and he is her estranged father that she escaped from in the first X movie, when she said that she had a past and she wasn't, she kind of lost her faith, was because this fundamentalist had taken the church into a really weird route. And so Miller's grand plan and what it all comes down to, so I'm breaking down the final bit of the ending here, is that he saw Hollywood as corrupt. He always wanted Maxine to be his star. He was going to use her to promote church stuff. She ran away. She became a porn star. He kind of tracked her down over the years, and he started shooting these movies as a counter to what Hollywood was doing, and it became fanaticism, and he gathered these followers of people whose kids went missing, ran away, whatever, and he's exposing how sinful and corrupt Hollywood is while creating a snuff film. A- and this is where everything gets convoluted, and why I'm mixed on the ending, and I fell into a 7, was because it fits. It's kind of bonkers, and I'll explain the rest of the ending. It's kind of balls to the wall action, but it feels kind of out of left field more than Long Legs did. Long Legs was a natural progression and kind of moved at its own pace. When you get to the halfway point where her friends die, it just goes super quickly, and I felt like it really didn't set up this whole angle as much as I was like that. This was dropped in the first X movie. There was hints of this, but I felt like they didn't build this background very well unless we get a sort of prequel like Pearl to the stuff in Maxine's past. But it kind of feels out of left field. So when this whole thing happens, they knock her out. Oh, Lily Collins died. That was pretty cool. Her body parts are all over the place. But when she finds Lily Collins' body and she gets knocked out, she's tied to this tree. They're going to burn her alive on camera. Or no, they're going to brand her unless she confesses her sins, and then he's going to perform an exorcism on her, basically implying that he's bullshitting it to prove she was possessed by Hollywood. It's a really crazy. contrived kind of thing to run with, but he looks at it as saving his daughter from the corruption of the world. So Maxine is tied to a tree. She's trying to get out. Meanwhile, Torres and Williams hear commotion and gunshots. They come up. There's a huge shootout. This is kind of cool, which bumped it back up for me. Uh, Torres and Williams, he's gun ho. They shoot. The other thing that, and it's a small nitpick, but they're shooting around Maxine. There's like, dude, at the end of this movie, there's like a big shootout, right? And one of the things I hate is when your main star is tied to something and people are shooting in the background, but there's like no strays, there's no ricochets, like, right? There's full on, like, dude's got a sawed off shotgun, there's 9mm blast, you see parts of the tree being hit, but she doesn't get hit by a stray at all. Kind of annoyed me. I know it's a small thing, but if you're gonna have a shootout where you put your central character in the center of it, tied to a fucking palm tree, and there's gunshots going all over the place, it would be realistic to have that person at the very least get winged or something in the ensuing fire, because all we see is parts of the tree right next to her being shot. But anyway, she has her switchblade. She frees herself, jumps into the water, stabs this dude. Pretty gnarly scene. I always got a thing with people getting stabbed in the eye. It's gross. So the detectives Williams and Torres basically kill most of Miller's followers. Miller gets injured, and so okay, let me back up. Maxine gets free. Miller chases the or Miller gets injured by Maxine. Miller gets chased by the detectives Williams and Torres, and then while pursuing Miller, who's armed with a regular 9mm, Maxine grabs a shotgun, follows behind them, and then uh, the awesome Miller gets shot. He's bleeding. Torres is there. She tells Maxine to hang tight because she's a cop, hold the wound. You hear a couple of gunshots above the way, and then she basically lets go of Torres. Yes, he dies. Goes up the hill. Miller's there. She's like, I got that son of a bitch. I got him. Now, the cool thing is, too, this final sequence is on top of the Hollywood sign. And so they're on top of the giant hill. And Torres gets shot, and she's like grabbing her gut. It's a fatal wound. She falls down the whole entire hill, and and I gotta say, the cinematography in this movie is great because you see little dust rolling down, and then where she stops, her body hits something. I don't know, but you see the moment of impact where she stops. So she stopped like halfway down the hill. It was a funny long shot. There's a lot of great shots in this film. Uh, so you see Maxine, she gets to his father, he's mortally wounded, and she's got this double barrel shotgun. There's a helicopter above, and they's like, put the gun down, blah, 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 blah. And then you see her vision, and this is where the movie gets a little bit confusing. So she envisions how this all goes down, where she shoots him, it cuts the premiere of her film. She's on talk shows about how she stopped this cult and all of this jazz, and how she envisions everything happening. Like, she becomes a major star. Her movie gets boosted because she's the girl who survived and saved all these people. And then we cut back to the scene again, and you see her with the shotgun over the head of her father, and she says the line from the beginning that if you want something, you've got to be willing to take it no matter what the cost, right, Dad? And she shoots him in the face. Great scene. Another highlight in this movie. So the two best scenes was Kevin Bacon's death and this random dude who's her father's death. Great gory kills for the ending. She basically blows his face off with a shotgun, and they cut back. they skipped to like 8 months later, and now we're sitting there, and they have, and this is great. I do like the things he throws in about Hollywood, because they don't give a shit about people dying. Just the production got held up for 8 months. So you have the director come, and she talks about like, oh, what's her name? Molly. Molly was such a pivotal role to this production, and they do the bullshit moment of silence on set, and everyone's pretending, and you see the directors and the other like assistants and PAs stuff, and they're kind of looking up like, okay, when are we done? And so she shoots, and Elizabeth has this great talk with uh, Maxine, and it's all about how Maxine is now uh, positioned better than Molly ever was. She just sold the rights to her own story, which I assume is the film we're watching now. So a cool little connection there. And then she talks about like, this is just a start, but what you do with your start from here will determine the rest of your career. And she's like, in a sense, this is the divine intervention that she needed. So the Elizabeth looks at her, and she goes, "Well, now that you're here, the movie's done. It's going to get a push because of course she was cleared of all charges. Her father was, connected with all these murders. Essentially, the Night Stalker in the news got captured. He got captured pretending to be the Night Stalker. And so she looks at her, and there's a great monologue at the end, and she goes, well, now that you're here, she goes, I've talked to a lot of people, like, what do you want out of your career? What do you want out of this fame that you'll obtain? And she looks at her, and she goes, I never want it to end, no matter what the cost is. And then they show a picture of her head, that because she casted the mole at the beginning of the movie, and they show a picture of her head, and they do the credits, and that's the end of the film. So let me give my overall thoughts on why this is crazy. So first off, the mystery, and I said this in my non-spoiler, but now I'm going to be specific. And the mystery was obvious. I knew from the beginning it was going to be her father because he'd been mentioned in the first movie. There was a connection there. I was hoping it would be a more interesting twist. The father pretending to be the Night Stalker to kind of corner her, and then wanting to shoot his own snuff film to combat Hollywood. And I get it's supposed to deal with fundamentalism and how religion and censors and things like that tend to overdo it, and how one side trying to combat another side goes to the extreme as well, and that neither sides of the spectrum are right. They're both going about things fundamentally wrong. Like, I get all of that, but the fact of how it was executed was not very good, in my opinion. It was very rushed, and there wasn't much on her father. We didn't get much on what led him down this way. There's nothing mentioned like, was it the mother left him? We didn't see his fanaticism grow, or his belief on how he had to change Hollywood. Why Hollywood? It, there's no answer. It's just, oh, because of the clippings in the beginning. It's, oh, it's because Hollywood has always done these grimy things, which is a true statement. But how we arrived there feels very sloppy, very rushed. Also, I've mentioned this several times, the connections to the characters, and more specifically, Maxine. Now, I have praised Mia Goth, but there's one fundamentally bad, bad character writing in this, in the fact that she doesn't have an arc, or we don't see the arc between X and Maxine. And what I mean by that is, when you start off Maxine, she's the typical final girl. And, or when you start off X. When you get to Maxine, she's a badass, which, okay, I could get behind based on I saw X. But if you haven't seen X and you just go into Maxine, you kind of feel like you miss a step between they want her to have PTSD and this handicap, but they don't really explore it. They want her to have this growth, but I don't really feel like she grew or learned a lesson in this at all. She kind of starts off a badass, goal driven, and ends a badass, goal driven. But there's no realization. Like, she doesn't say, "Oh, is the fame too much?" She never questions any of it. They don't try to make a question between like her and Pearl, like having a nagging feeling that she's not going to make it and she's just going to wind up a psychopath like Pearl was in the first two movies. There's no there's a connection, but there's no arc or no connection with Maxine's character, and it feels like somewhere in between there's a whole missing chapter of Maxine's story and her drive and how she got from point A to point B. Like you got, or I'll say point C because point B feels like it's missing, right? You got point A and point C, right? Point C is the conclusion, Maxine. Point A was X. And point B is the in between that I have no idea what this character goes through. And there's not enough time to really flesh out her struggles and her getting over her PTSD and her maybe realizing that the industry that she's chasing has killed her friends and destroyed the people around her just for her to get her start. Like, I get that those things are in the movie, but they're not really explored or fleshed out, which kind of leaves me with a great performance, but a character that feels very flat. And that's my biggest issue, is that her arc and the ending in general feels very flat where it's supposed to be kind of impactful. And I don't get the same impact that I felt in X or in Pearl. It doesn't feel like there's any real arc. Now, Ty West says he's going to do a fourth movie, and some people don't want it, some people do. I think this works nice as a trilogy, but if he does a fourth movie, I think really he should do a movie like Pearl with Maxine and fill in the gaps. Like, how did she wind up making it to Hollywood? What was that journey? Show her going through her PTSD, have her face off with something else, and then you can kind of watch Pearl with X, which explains the killer's good, and you can watch the fourth movie with Maxine, and then it all kind of comes together. I really feel like there's a missing part, or Maxine and X were supposed to be one movie, and they split it into a trilogy because it feels like a conclusion, but it feels rushed at the ending. I can't explain it. And I've had this problem rating this movie, which is why I landed like 7 popped into my head, because it feels like it completed what he started, but it doesn't feel very coherent getting to from point A to point B. It just feels like there's a missing portion that none of us got to see. And if he does a fourth film, I really hope he does like Pearl. Like, do a film on Maxine that fleshes out the rest of her arc, because as it stands, like, yes, on a very surface level, on a basic character level, you can go, "Oh yeah, I see her arc between X and Maxine." But now, if you've never watched X, which I don't know why you wouldn't, X was great. But if you didn't watch these sequentially and you just go into Maxine, and these movies have been standalone for the most part, but Maxine feels very much like you have to watch X in order to fully appreciate the arc. And even watching X, Pearl, and Maxine, I still feel like the arc is missing a big middle portion that we just don't have. And the other thing with the characters, right? Kevin Bacon is great. We don't get enough of him. Giancarlo Esposito's great. Love Teddy Knight. Barely in the movie. Lily Collins didn't really need to be in the movie. She was just a fun little nod. The producer, Elizabeth, she was great. The actress really got the cold, calculated, like, supervisor, but it's just enough. And this is what I mean. Like, you have Maxine's friend Leon, and his death is supposed to be pivotal, but all I know about him is that him and Maxine are good friends. And the actor does a great job. Like I said, there's not a bad performance in this movie. the actor does a good job, but I feel like the script and the story really lets the acting down because they don't flesh it out enough. Like everybody, like I said in X, I had more than enough to where I really got kind of a little bit mad when they killed off characters because I liked them. In this, it felt like what you go for when a slasher. This is stock character B. They're friends with main character A, and they just get off and they're meant to move the story along. And it's a shame because the actors do such a great job in these roles that I can't even say it's on an acting level. And I can't say the character's written bad because the actor had good material to work with. It's just they're not fleshed out enough. And really, the world feels more, it feels like we're in the 80s, but there's still a lot of things not explored. There's not a lot of cool things they could have gone into. They mention stuff about censorship. They don't really dive into that much, except for with the porn versus Hollywood kind of a thing. I think that whole angle was the best explored, was Hollywood versus the porn industry and how they're both kind of the same. They peddle different things, but they're peddling people at the end of the day. And I like that. And I think if the movie had more of those themes, it would be in the 8 or 9. I mean, I saw Long Legs, bam, 10. I'm not changing that. I don't give a shit what anybody tells me or what the arguments are. I know it's divisive, but for me, it screamed 10. It screamed 10 because I went back and I saw it a second time. And like I said, it was a good detective film because I could pick the pieces of where the ending went to. This one, I know the ending from the beginning, but there's no breadcrumbs leading us through this mystery. Nothing compelling except for the actors that's really moving the story along. So when you get to the end of the film, it feels so rushed because it doesn't feel like they laid down the tracks well enough to get the ending we had. And Pearl and X had crazy ass endings. It's not saying you can't go balls to the wall nuts and just do this crazy shootout because that's the genre you want to be in. But I felt like he didn't lay enough track down for the stop that we got to at the end of this film. It was just a hair short. He should have fleshed out Maxine more, should have fleshed out her friends more, maybe give us a little bit more with the detectives, show them doing investigation work, not the typical, oh, there's a body. Oh, gotta go to Mark. Oh, we gotta question Maxine. Like, get into it. They're doing forensics. They don't know. Uh, they figure out it's connected to Maxine. Now, is she a suspect? Is she, you know, there's none of that. And I think that's what Longlegs did better for me, where like they were switching it up, and it's even like, okay, what's the deal with the detective? And like every clue you got, there was 10 more questions that you had when you got one answer. And in this, it's not trying to do that. And I get it. It's not, that's not what they're going for here. But I think like splicing little clues, maybe details about her father, a couple of flashbacks with her doing shit with her dad, and seeing how he's sort of going more crazier and he's getting more dogmatic with his religious views, and he's going too far off and it's pushing her away. There's none of that, and I think that would have benefited the movie and it would have built this sense. So when you get the reveal it's her father, you go, oh wow, like, maybe show stuff where he takes her out and they have a good time and he's so proud of her getting her first like dancing lesson or something. Like flesh out the character so when you bring in this villain, you go, "Oh, wow, like okay, I knew it was the dad, but wow." Even have stuff at the end where he's like, "I love you, but this is for your own good." But there's none of that. When you get the villain, he feels very cartoon. It's like, you're gonna repent, and I'm gonna make Hollywood sorry. We're gonna exorcise the demons and doing the televangelist thing. And I get what he's going for, but for the tone and the acting and the vibe of the movie, it doesn't fit as well as I would have liked it. And even having those negatives and saying all that, I did my positives, but I'm just going to say them one more time. The shot composition is great. The music is deep cuts from the 80s. So they didn't use the generic stock 80s soundtrack. There was some deep, like, you have to know your 80s to be like, oh, I know that song. Like, they got some pretty deep cuts, and then they got the standard ones you'll hear and you'll know. They got Dee Snider actually in the movie when he was going to Congress about heavy metal. That is all cool. The aesthetics are immaculate. It's very visually shot very well. uh, there's not as many long shots or wide shots as long legs or big takes, but the action is very tight. There's a couple of shots where like he's killing Leon and the camera angles are tight in and you could see the details, and then they do a quick cut to where you know what's happening, but he lets your mind fill in how badly it's going to turn out. So there's a lot of good stuff with that, but even like the kills, there were a lot less kills, and so the pacing is dictated by the acting, and I feel like this is a movie now that I know where it goes. I would get it just to complete the trilogy, and if I'm in the mood, I'll watch X Pearl and Maxine, but it's not one I would get if it wasn't tied into the first movie. It would be like a one and done watch. Because it's connected to X and because it does close a lot of those story loops, I think that is the one reason that elevates it slightly more than if this was a separate property. Like if Pearl did this, I would have a lower rating of Pearl. But Pearl can stand on its own as its own separate movie, just like X could. And I feel like Maxine is very much dependent on X. And if you don't have X, Maxine does not work at all. But I think there's a lot of forgiveness that people give the movie because it's directly connected to X and everybody loved X. So this is was a tough one, but not so much for rating, but for my feelings and my overall general just 7 is just all I heard in my head. Like as I'm watching it and I get to the end, I'm like, this is a 7. Like, and there's nothing wrong with a 7. It's above average. So it's good, but it just misses the mark on that great like 8 9 like X. I would have like at an 8 and 8.5, and Pearl is a 10 because the acting, the shots, everything is immaculate. Like Mia Goth flexes her acting in that movie. But this one is so weird because it just drops down for me like 3 points because of the way that this is constructed. And I respect Ty West. I think he's a great director. I'll watch what he puts out. I think he's got an eye for shots. I think he writes characters and gets the right actors for the characters. And I think he has good stories in his head. This is just one where he didn't quite stick the landing for me. And that's going to do it for me on my Maxine preview. This was like I figured, a little under an hour and some change. It's not like Long Legs where I had a whole lot to analyze. It's a very straightforward movie. It's it's good as far as a watch if you just want to watch a very straightforward, pulpy, horror, slasher, 80s vibe kind of movie. And you know what? We've had such a year for movies. Sometimes a movie like this is fine. It's good. I liked Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey too. I got so much shit from even people that are, but look, I liked it. I thought it was fine for what it was. It was a mindless, stupid slasher, way better than the first movie. Lots of fun to be had. This is a high quality, very well put together, very well acted, great sound design, great music score movie that's just like, to me, a popcorn action flick. It has all the things to keep you entertained, but it doesn't have as much substance as the original two had to go back through and go, oh, this is going to be on my rewatch. For me, this was just very good at what it did. It didn't try to do more. It didn't do less. It did just enough to keep me entertained. I don't think this movie sucks. I think that's a fucking terrible take. I've heard some god awful takes on this movie. Um, I get what people are saying, but I think it's kind of stupid. Like if you think about bad movies, to put this at like a 6 or a 5 is kind of just fucking ridiculous to me because like it's not badly acted, it's not badly directed. It's got story issues, yes, but the story up until the ending is pretty good. And you could even do the ending. Hey, Carmel, good to see you here. You could even do the ending the way that you did it But for people to say, "Oh, this movie sucks because it wasn't how they envisioned it," well, it's not your fucking movie. It's Ty West's vision. Y'all praise the shit out of him for X and Pearl, and now Maxine does its own thing. And this is the other thing, really quick, that I wanted to get on about movie ratings and things like that. And I saw it for Long Legs too. A lot of different, just all across the board, still calling it a masterpiece. I had the same pushback with Joker. I don't give a fuck. I like what I like. Um, but I think that this is a movie like Long Legs that's highly divisive because people have things built into their mind coming off of X of how you want it to end. Sorry about that. The stream wanted me to end. So people had this built into their minds about how they wanted it to end. And here at the end of the day, you were given the vision of the director. You were pulled into this world, and it's not your ending, it's his ending. It's how he wanted to set it up. This movie doesn't do anything really egregious. It doesn't destroy any characters. It has a lot of messages about Hollywood and the 80s kind of thing that could be referenced to today, but it doesn't throw in that stuff. It just is telling this story. It feels like this is the story he wanted to tell. He got to make the movies he wanted to make. People bitch about nothing new in the cinemas, and I think while this does pull a lot of things we've seen before, it does its own thing, and it doesn't give a shit about people's feelings. And I applaud that. I applaud a director willing to make a story because we don't get that anymore. It's all sequels and prequels and bullshit based on something else. And it's not a story that was created by someone, it's not an original idea. And I gotta applaud movies like Maxine and Long Legs that are coming out and they're being out of the box. There's another movie that I'm going to be reviewing called Protege or something like that. Cuckoo, which is another movie I've been anticipating. And there's a lot of good stuff out there, but if people don't go see it or they shit all over these movies, then Hollywood's just going to keep on giving us the same bullshit that I see every summer that's not worth me reviewing. So, I think it was very important to have movies like this. Like so far, my top movie for my top 10 or up in the top 10 because there's a lot of great movies coming out is Love Lies Bleeding. It's so weird, it's so unique, it's so strange, but it's so well done. And I really love that movie. And I did a spoiler review, go check it out. But I I want more creative movies like this, and I think A24, Neon, and all of these studios are really giving us these unique movies from these directors who give a shit about writing, who have a passion for making films and building stories and building worlds and building characters and having a unique vision. And you don't gotta like the vision, but calling something terrible because it's not what you envisioned and not giving any good reasons is bullshit. And it's one of the reasons why I hate mainstream reviewing, and even some people on the platform who review who have gotten big and it just like shitting on something because it's trendy and it makes the algorithm. I've never been about that, and I won't do that here. I don't give a shit if Disney paid for me to go see their movies for the rest of my life if I had to compromise how I feel about a film. Fuck them, I wouldn't take that. Because at the end of the day, I think it's to give you guys a fair assessment. I like Maxine. I rate it at a 7. That doesn't mean you'll see it as a 7. I'm saying on the merits of the film alone, just sound design, shot composition, and acting, it deserves at least that. Now, the ending is where people will differ with me. And how you feel about the end of this film, that's up to you. I'm not going to say you're wrong about it. This is just how I feel about the film, and it did it for me, and it completed it enough. The other two movies were stronger, but we got a nice solid trilogy of horror films, which comes along every God, how long that we get a good solid franchise that does what it sets out to do. So good for Ty West. I'll check out a fourth movie if he makes it. I like this set of movies, and I think the third film does finish the storyline of X and concludes that character if we never get another film set in this world. I'm fine with that. It's a good complete story. So anyways, check out my spoiler review of Long Legs. Thank you very much for watching. I try to keep these within an hour. I don't go through all of the scenes, but I think I broke it down very well and I gave you guys the big things and picked out the scenes that were why I got to the rating that I got at. And if you guys like these, which a lot of people apparently like my Long Legs in depth breakdown, I'll do more of these breakdowns for you guys on different movies so that you get a good idea, especially like an A24 neon movie. I think it helps to watch sometimes these reviews so you know what you're getting into. But yeah, Maxine was fun. I liked it. It was a great fun ride. I don't regret buying the ticket. I don't regret seeing the movie. It was just missing that flavor that the first two movies had for me. I don't think that makes it a terrible movie. I think these people are fucking ridiculous who say this is the worst movie because, oh, they didn't get the ending that they wanted to. Too bad. Go see a generic movie. You'll get the fucking end you want. There's a movie for you. Find it. But for me, I respect that I knew what was going to happen, but I didn't know. I respect that he went balls to the wall crazy at the end. Like a shootout. That was not on my bingo card. So, like, whether or not I like this ending, kind of like Jordan Peele, I like all of his movies because those fucking endings you can't predict. You've no clue where it's gonna go. And you know what? I gotta respect a filmmaker and a visionary who does not care necessarily about how we're gonna pick apart his vision. He just lay it out and they go, here, this is the story. This is what I saw. You like it, you like it. You don't, you don't. That's fucking film. It's subjective. But thank you everybody for watching. Check us out tomorrow. We will be doing another tier list. Now we're going to be doing Star Wars villains ranked. And this will be shorter because there's less villains apparently than there are heroes. So check us out tomorrow. It'll be me, Pop Culture PV, Chris Knight from the Real Reviews 3000, Chaos Central. Go check out his channel if you haven't. And thank you everybody who sat through this hour and 7 minute review and breakdown of Maxine. All in all, I give this movie a 7. I say go ahead, go see it. There's nothing really out until Deadpool comes out. Go check this out. I'll be doing my Deadpool review Thursday night because that's the first opening night. Disney has banned all of us who have pre-seen it to do any reviews. My channel can get pulled, or I could actually get I could lose my channel for reviewing it ahead of time. Basically, this is everybody who's seen it early. I don't know why Disney is pulling this. I'm really hoping they didn't change the version I watched. I'm gonna go see it again so that I can make sure the scenes that I saw are actually in the film because uh, it was a final cut, but subject to change. I'm gathering based on the reaction. The reaction in my theater was good, but like I said, I can't legally review it, so I'll be releasing the non-spoiler review Thursday at midnight. I'll probably jump into some discussions with other people and really talk about it, but I want to get everybody's opinion. I think it's going to do fucking bananas. I think that's going to be the $1 billion movie of this year. It's really great, and obviously I'm going to see it twice. So I think this is the last good Marvel product we're going to get for a couple of years. So definitely strap in. Go check out Deadpool Wolverine. I think a lot of people will be surprised at what Disney is allowing Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman to get away with in that movie. Because holy shit, that definitely earns its R. It's not a soft R, I'll tell you that. But anyways, thank you everybody for watching. Like, share, subscribe. Send everyone this link. Tell them I do these reviews. The next breakdown review that I'm going to do, I'm going to have to think about, but I'm thinking of maybe doing an older movie. So, I'm going to connect it to Long Legs, and I think I'm going to do a breakdown on the 1984 classic, The Thing by John Carpenter. I might start doing some reviews on John Carpenter movies and things like that. I don't know. You guys let me know if there's a movie you want to see me break down. There's a lot of other new movies out that I got to see and review, but thank you everybody for watching. And as always, remember, there is only one rule here in the Phantom Zone: kneel before General Zod.